Did you know that Miami is one of the top 5 largest cargo destinations in the country? Well, my friend here, Jerry Stapel, just let me know that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome to A Day in Miami. I am your host, Anabel, live from the studios of Miami's Community News. And today's show is sponsored by Heyday Marketing, a public relations and marketing agency based right here in Miami, Florida. If you want your quote for a PR or marketing strategy, please look at the website below and give us a call. So I have here Jerry Stapel.
Thank you.
He is a commercial realtor and a business broker.
Correct.
Those are two amazing things, especially in Miami, that we are growing exponentially daily.
Yep.
So tell me a little bit, how did you get involved in the business? And tell me a little bit about the company that you work for.
Sure. So I have been in Miami for 30 years, and I was a financial planner up until 2008 and 9 when the entire economy went upside down. And I realized that there was a huge opportunity on the real estate happening because, of course, we had already had the collapse. And so I started venturing in that arena. I had already been helping with business planning and business consulting. I had done that a lot, and I was already venturing into business brokerage. Well, when you buy or sell a business, that has a leasing component because that business is operating out of some particular property. And you need to either assign that commercial lease or you need a new lease for that. Namely, it could be a restaurant, it could be a warehouse, it could be any type of commercial real estate. And so in 2008 and 9, I started venturing to that and finally got licensed. So it's been over 12 years that I have been working as a commercial realtor and business broker.
Wow, that's impressive. And you were telling me a little bit before we went on air. The company that you work for is
Avanti Way.
Avanti Way, and we could pull up the website. And you have a lot of individuals that work there.
Correct. We're approximately 1,500 realtors.
That's
a company. We have grown. We have won many accolades in the last 5-6 years on how we have grown. It's very technologically advanced. We have a lot of tools that have been developed specifically for our company, so we could continue to grow. And then the company spun off the commercial division for which I work. We're about 15 realtors. The broker for the division is Fernando Arencibia. He's been, on the board of commercial realtors in Miami. And we specialize on that, commercial real estate and business brokerage.
Tell our audience a little bit about commercial realty. Like, what does that encompass? Warehouses?
Right. So it's easier if you think about it as warehouses, offices. It could be retail, it could be land. But I'd say it's easier if you think what is not residential. So when you look at houses or apartments, that's typically residential. Buy, sell, or lease apartments or houses. But commercial entails most prominently industrial, which is warehousing, offices. We also do retail, all these locations where you go for a restaurant or a spa or a massage or something like that, and then land as well. So raw land, which can also be zoned for residential, for commercial, or for industrial, as well as agricultural.
And now, ever since COVID, I'm sure the dynamics changed. Like, people that bought homes probably made a space within their home to have their own business. Mm-hmm. Now, what would that be considered?
Well, that's home offices.
Okay.
And typically, what I like about my occupation is that I am helping entrepreneurs as they grow. Typically, somebody starts in the garage. Even the big companies. I was reading about Hewlett-Packard, Microsoft, all these companies who start in a garage. And as you start growing and then you need bigger space, that's where we come into play. A commercial realtor can help you find a bigger office or a bigger warehouse or a bigger location for you to operate your business. And we facilitate that growth. And that's something that we enjoy doing a lot.
Yeah, I can tell you do. And what is the one main, how would you say, aspect or thing that somebody purchasing office space looks for? Is it location? Is it size? A little bit of everything. But what's the one thing?
Location in real estate, location is always critical.
Okay.
You want to be close to what your clients are so that they can access to you, especially in Miami where distances are so long. You don't want to be traveling either from home to your office or your clients, having to travel a long time to get to you.
Right.
The same thing for warehousing. You want something close to highways so that you could, if you're distributing, that your trucks can access your clients faster. So we are always looking for location. location is critical. And then size is very important so that we could find the exact size or approximate size ideal for your business. And that, and in office is how many people are you going to be having working at the office. You need conference rooms, you need a waiting room, you need reception desk, medical office. So you could also become more specialized. So medical offices have a particular requirements for exam rooms. They need sinks, which is typically offices don't need. They have a bathroom, but the bathroom could be outside, could be on the lobby or on the corridor. So you start looking for more specifics of what the client is looking for. In terms of cargo, how much volume are you going to need? That determines, of course, the warehouse space, but also the height of the warehouse, loading and unloading. Do you need docks? Maybe you don't need docks. And the most important is zoning of the warehouse. Sometimes the use that the client wants to have in that warehouse is or not allowed by the landlord or by the city. Sometimes you need manufacturing, or you are doing auto repair, and those things may or may not be allowed at the particular warehouse. So the commercial realtors always has many little items that need to be checked off to make sure that the property is ideal for the client.
Right. And it's interesting because you talked about location and size.
Correct.
And one of the things I remember the most was recently, and when I say recently, it's probably like 7 years ago, the Amazon that opened in Opalaca. I found that to be so interesting. What a location, but the land was available. And it's a warehouse.
Right.
So it's not like people are coming to visit because it's not such a great area, right? So do you recall that?
Well, Opalaca is a very industrial area.
Yeah,
it's huge, and you find large spaces of warehouses there, and it has very easy access to either I-95, the Palmetto, or very near the Turnpike. So Opalaca is very strategically located. It's also very close to the airport, the executive airport, and it's not far from Miami International Airport. It's not far from the Miami port or the Port of Miami. It has many attributes, and is a lot less expensive than if you want to be in Doral Medley, which is very, very close to the airport, but because of that also is more expensive. So when you need warehouses that are huge, that are 50 or 100,000 square feet, you look for something where you could be more economically viable, and Opalaca offers that.
Interesting. I always wondered that, but thank you for answering my question. So now moving on to another subject, the state of the commercial market. You had mentioned to me that there's been a boom in Miami.
Right.
So tell me a little bit about that.
So on the office space, a lot of technological companies have decided to migrate to Miami. Lots of people coming to Miami from different states. Miami and Florida in general has been very welcoming to businesses, has been very favorable. So they have been moving, and as such, the office environment has been taking a big boom. At the same time where a lot of people are working from home. So it's been very a mix of I guess variables happening in the market. On the industrial side, however, because of all this new distribution, a lot of online businesses, a lot of online nowadays you can buy anything online. So not only through Amazon, but a lot of companies are now doing. You could purchase their property, their stuff online. That has, I guess, increased the demand for warehouses in Miami significantly.
Okay.
And that has, of course, driven the rental rates up as well.
That's
Depending on where you are in Miami, location is always critical. But we have increased in the last 2 years. We've seen rents increase 50%. So
for commercial space.
For commercial space, and industrial particularly.
Interesting.
That, of course, translates to high rents for clients. Yeah, it's huge. So I remember leasing 2 years ago large warehouses for $12, $13 a foot, now going for $25 a foot.
Wow.
It's 50%. I mean, sometimes more.
Wow.
So yeah, it's been an issue in Miami. We think that it's been stabilizing. I think we've reached the point where now we're having new warehouses come to the market, new developments, brand new constructions, large commercial property managers have been investing in Miami, buying land and building warehouses. So we're going to see a lot more offering in the next few years.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. And where from your experience, where are these business owners coming from? Like, what country have you seen it the most?
So we are getting a lot of people from Colombia. Venezuela continues to be an influx.
Okay.
Mexicans, Argentinians. So our economies from Mexico to Argentina have been suffering significantly because of government situations or security. So we get a lot of immigrants from these countries, particularly buying businesses that are established.
Right.
They seek E2 visas, which are visas that are for investors in particular. We also see Europeans, but of course the biggest influx in Miami, I would say 80% is from Hispanic origins. And also in the United States, we have seen a lot of companies migrating from states that have estate taxes to Florida that does not charge estate tax.
Oh, okay.
So companies are seeing a lot more favorable variables here in Florida, and that has continued since the pandemic. Miami just became a big boom.
Yeah, that's interesting. Good to know. So when it comes to picking your ideal industrial space, we were talking a little bit about size, location. What are some other things that young individuals starting their business should look forward to?
So many variables need to be considered. The length of a lease, how long do you want the lease to be? Do you need loading or unloading docks? That's very critical. If you probably don't need it now, but you foresee that you're going to grow big enough to have loading and unloading containers, that's going to expedite your operation significantly.
Right.
So maybe you don't want such a long-term lease so that you could eventually migrate. Many industrial complexes in Miami have so many spaces that may allow you to grow. So you could grow within the same industrial complex with the same landlord. They always are willing to help you grow.
Right.
Not so simple when you want to downsize, but they always are willing to help you grow.
Of course.
So you might have a small warehouse that is, good for your current needs, and these landlords may help you as you grow. In 2-3 years, maybe move to a bigger warehouse. Having that flexibility is going to be critical, and you get that when you work with big landlords. So we represent typically tenants. Large firms represent mostly the landlords. And what we do, our office, or Avanti Way as a real estate company, mostly represents the tenants. And we're always looking for the ideal scenario for this tenant so that he could grow as the time goes by.
That's interesting to know. What is one bizarre company or individual that you helped and you're like, that's a bizarre company?
We get so many different uses. In the last 2 years, I've seen a lot of requests for tattoo parlors.
Interesting.
They just want a retail space. Many landlords welcome them, and many others don't welcome them.
Right.
They just have still, this stigma.
Yeah.
So I would say tattoo parlors are one of them. We see a lot of growth on the tobacco. So cigar lounges.
Okay.
Now, cigar lounges, you can actually purchase your cigars and actually smoke them at the same retail location.
Okay.
They have like the different, rooms.
Yeah.
And so that's, I guess, some different type of uses that we have seen grow recently.
Some popular ones. Interesting. Okay, let's pull up the website. Andres, our producer, is going to pull up the website. And so on your website, what's some information that individuals can
So this is our main website.
Okay.
As I said, we're about 1,500 realtors, and our office is very geared technologically towards the residential area. We have already launched our commercial division, and we are in the process of making it our own website so that you could go and look for office space or warehouse space.
Oh, that's good.
Right.
Actually, that would,
Right. However,
very convenient.
Like there are sites on the market that people use for the residential. Like, I don't know if you've heard of Zillow. People look at Zillow to look for residential.
Right.
In the commercial, people look mostly at LoopNet, and we are very active in the LoopNet website where we list our properties, warehouses. We, of course, have listings for warehouse space or office space. And we belong to the Business Brokers of Florida, which is the largest brokerage association in the country to transact businesses. So we can look at businesses for sale, or we could list our businesses for sale and that. You could find those also bizbuysell.com, which is another website that is owned by the CoStar Group. It's just a large group for information such as industrial and commercial real estate.
Okay, and if somebody is looking for office space, they can contact you directly.
Correct.
And what is your email?
So my email is jerry@avantiway.com.
Perfect.
It's
And they
very
can find it
simple.
on the website?
Sure.
Okay,
Jerry at
perfect.
Avanti Way. You can look me up. And in Avanti, when you call the number, because there's only about 15 of us that specialize on the commercial arena, it's easier to find. You call Jerry, there's not many Jerrys in the office.
No, how funny.
So, yeah.
And I do have an interesting question. What's one city where they don't allow industrial space? I mean, is that even a thing?
Well, yes, there's many cities in the metropolitan of Miami area
Okay.
where they're mostly
Residential.
So Coral Gables, for instance, has very little warehouses.
Right.
Or if you go through Doral, does have, but they are limited by the geographic boundaries.
I was thinking Key
But-
Biscayne too, because I'm a resident.
Key Biscayne, there you go.
Right.
It's-
I have not seen one warehouse.
Correct. You do see office spaces.
Yeah.
You see retail. There's other cities. I would say Pinecrest. You don't see many warehouses, or Palmetto Bay.
Is that because they don't want that look for their city?
I think that by design, when they incorporate it and they look at the geographic boundaries, they just were already developed residential.
Right.
So I guess the growth to commercial or to industrial happens when the city has boundaries big enough to allow that use. So Doral had that. Hialeah had that. Hialeah Gardens. We see a lot of industrial on Medley. As a matter of fact,
Medley, of course.
you see very little residential.
Oh, yeah, there's only like those few houses on the water.
Correct. But it's very, very, so it's interesting as you move through Miami. There are many cities that you pass by. There's West Miami, there's South Miami, which are actually incorporated cities, but you don't see necessarily a lot of warehouses. You
Right.
might see some retail, you might see some offices, but not so many warehouses.
Excellent. That's so true. Thank you, Andres. So they can just go on the website?
They can go on the website, they can look me up, or they can send me an email, jerry@avantiway.com.
I love
It's
it.
fairly simple.
Very, very simple. And so you do either commercial realtor or business broker. You
Correct.
could do either one or both of them at the same time.
Well, typically when you do a business transaction, it entails a leasing that at some point you need to address the lease, because let's say I'm buying a business from you. Let's say
Right.
that you own a bakery,
Okay.
a beautiful bakery by Sunset, and you want to sell it. So we can help you sell it. We list it, and the buyer is interested in acquiring your business, but the lease is on your business name, and you are the owner of your business. Now the new buyer needs to sign a new lease or needs to be assigned that lease that is in place.
Right.
So we need to involve the landlord to accept the new tenant, and they may or may not accept it. It depends on the financial qualification.
Interesting.
So sometimes the landlord is the last part of the business brokerage transaction that we address, but it could actually either help or kill the deal.
Gotcha.
If the buyer is not, like, we get a lot of foreign buyers. We get people from Argentina, Venezuela, Colombia, but they don't have history here. They don't have a credit history. They don't have many assets. And
right.
the landlord may feel apprehensive.
Right.
So when you have a business that has a very important real estate component, even though it's a lease, the landlord may approve or disapprove of that buyer. Because they're not. So right now, for instance, I'm negotiating for a large bakery. I'd rather not say who, but
Right.
they have already 8 locations in Florida, and they're opening one in West Palm Beach.
Oh, cool.
But it's a franchise. So the guys who are buying the franchise and establishing in West Palm Beach need to qualify with the landlord as their own on their own financial ground,
Okay.
not on the franchise. So if you could establish a new, let's say, Subway.
Right.
Well, Subway is a huge corporation, but you will be the owner. Now, the landlord needs to qualify you as an individual,
Right.
owner of your own company, to establish your franchise in a particular retail.
Right.
And that's something that we as brokers are always trying to facilitate for both parties. Sometimes we represent the landlord, sometimes we represent the tenants. And that's what we're doing always, trying to make sure that the transaction runs smoothly. And sometimes what happens is when the when the tenant or the buyer is not highly qualified because they don't have assets here or not a whole lot of assets, or they don't have credit history, we could put some additional security deposits. So instead of two months, the landlord may say, okay, well, we'll let you lease the space, but we would need 5 or 6 months of security deposit, which entails, entails a lot more money.
Yeah. If from your experience, where is the most expensive commercial?
Well, it depends. So if you look at retail, Lincoln Road is one of the most expensive. Okay. Wynwood is very expensive for retail. From there, sometimes you find some spot on Miami Beach or on Brickell for retail. If it's standalone, if it's on a big highway or on a big avenue. In terms of industrial, the most expensive, I would say, is exactly Doral because of proximity to the airport and also proximity to the highway. So it's very well located.
Right.
Next to Palmetto 826 or next to 836, next to the turnpike. And that strategic location demands a higher rate.
Yeah. And yeah.
And then, so in office space, Brickell with an ocean view, nothing beats that. Or
of course.
Key Biscayne, but you don't have as much office space in Key Biscayne, perhaps only for local people that live there. Because driving to Key Biscayne or driving out, if you don't live there, it's not going to be as convenient. But Brickell commands, and I guess Midtown, especially those buildings with a beautiful view.
And Ball Harbor, maybe?
Yeah. Right. Anything that has a view to the ocean
is going to be
pricey. Very sought after, and it's going to be expensive.
So now, with so many buildings and so many people, as Miami keeps growing, is there something that you guys are planning on doing? I know it sounds crazy, like building underground, like I mean, like space. Like, where's the space going to go? Like,
I think that's a very good question for the commissioners of Miami. Because we have what's called the urban develop boundaries. Miami has an approved building code and approved building boundary. So beyond that is considered agricultural, and you cannot build either residential or commercial or industrial.
If it's agricultural.
So we need the commission to always be looking at where we can expand. And typically, right now, if you look at it, you can only expand west. But what is west of Miami? The Everglades.
Right.
So it's not so simple because now you run into environmental issues.
And we don't want to fight that battle.
Well, so we have been growing north. So the Hialeah area and upwards of that is where we have been growing the most. Some west or southwest, like in Kendall, but it's not so convenient to access highways. You can access the turnpike, but it's not built for that. Kendall is mostly residential.
Right.
So,
and Homestead?
Homestead has been growing as well.
I saw it because I went there the other day. I'm like, oh, wow.
Amazon has a few distribution centers already. Yeah, very large. And but I think now if you take the turnpike on a peak hour, you'll see that it's not so convenient for traffic.
No.
Or especially if you need a distribution center.
Right.
So the good thing about Amazon is they are receiving, but they are mostly distributing locally to South Miami or Homestead. But I think that our growth is going to be somewhat west, like west of the turnpike by Doral.
Okay.
Is north of 836 or the extension of 836. Some of that space, I think, is going to be where we're going to see most of our industrial developments in the near future.
Gotcha. Interesting. And what about, final questions because we have a few minutes left. But I could talk to you forever. This is so interesting. Is anyone worried about the sea level? People keep investing here. I mean, like, isn't anybody worried about that?
It's not something that we particularly address. We do worry about flooding. And when you are looking for a warehouse, we're always looking at flood areas, but not necessarily by looking at the flood plan. We actually want to drive when we've had recent rains, or we know which areas flood, and that's a concern for many clients. Flooding because of rain, not necessarily because of sea level. Sea level affect mostly the beach areas, Miami Beach or Brickell, which are very close to the ocean. Yeah. But for industrial or office space, we're not so concerned, or we at least not. I'm not saying we're disregarding, but it's not something that we look at it very frequently. We do look at flooding because of rain.
Right.
And it rains in Miami
Yes.
quite a lot.
Yes, and flooding in Brickell has been crazy.
Right.
Like I see it worse there, I think.
Correct.
And but like when it comes to sea level, like I mean the conspiracy theory, like Miami's going to be underwater soon. You don't believe in that?
I don't. I think that. I mean, I guess.
We'll find out.
Yeah, it's a catch-22
Yeah.
question. We do see lots of flooding in Doral. Remember, Miami is sitting on an aquifer. Miami Springs is called Miami Springs because there are water springs that, in other words, there's many springs of water near Miami that
Okay.
people don't think about that.
Okay.
And so environmentally, we have to be very careful to protect those. But at the same time, when you're trying to look for a location, you got to realize where perhaps is lower grounds that tend to flood more often. And we as commercial realtors know exactly where they are. And you see that on the rent. Like a house in Key Biscayne is going to be more expensive than in Kendall because of the location. Well, a location in industrial that is flooding more often is going to be a little less expensive than a location that doesn't flood as often or is on higher ground or has better features. So all these things play a part when we're negotiating a lease.
And you're always honest about everything, which
we
is
try to
great.
we try to always as a matter of fact we are required by law to always disclose everything that is negative about a property. Yeah, we need full disclosure. So we usually meet with the seller or the landlord.
Okay.
Typically, the landlord may not be very forthcoming, but especially if it's a purchase, the seller needs to disclose all the information that he is aware.
That's interesting because I know in upstate New York, like I've heard horror stories. Oh, this house is built on top of a cemetery. I'm like, says who? Like, so you would have to disclose that information.
If the seller knows it, yes. So, and we as brokers, we can only go to the seller for that information. We could do some research on our own, and we need to do some research on our own, but also the buyer needs to be aware of what's going on.
Right.
And they can conduct either inspections, they can do soil testing, they can do what we call phase 1 or phase 2 type of environmental to see if the ground has been maybe polluted. Maybe you had a gas station, maybe you had leaks of oil, stuff like that.
Right.
So there are different tests, and there's a period of due diligence in which the buyer can go and do these tests.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much, Jerry Stapel. It was great having you.
Thank you so
and
much.
we learned a lot on commercial real estate and business brokerage, so I appreciate your time. I am your host, Anabel, live from the studios of Miami's Community News, and today's show is sponsored by Heyday Marketing, a public relations and marketing agency based right here in Miami, Florida. If you're looking for a marketing campaign or PR campaign, please look at the information below and ask for your proposal today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.